In this edition of Garden Talk with the Tulsa Master Gardeners, we talk about an animal some call a garden pest, but others are happy to see pulling Santa's sleigh, how to keep your Christmas tree fresh during the season, and we'll talk about seed catalogs and hopefully take the mystery out of all those codes on seed packets. Welcome to Garden Talk.
How you doing? Welcome to the Master Gardener Podcast. I'm Tom Ingram here with Brian Jervis. How you doing, Brian?
I'm great. How are y'all?
Yeah, it's a little chilly outside.
It's wintertime.
It's December.
It's wintertime.
It's December now, you know. So yeah, we should be expecting that. But anyway, happy December. Well, it's not winter yet, but
it's close.
It's coming.
Some days are. Some days it's summer.
Some days it's summer.
That's right.
It's Oklahoma.
That's it.
But anyway, we've got some interesting topics for you today. I think we got a Christmas season coming up around here.
Not too far off.
The holiday season.
Not too far off.
And for our pest of the week this week, we're talking about a pest. A lot of deer can be a problem in people's yards. They'll eat stuff up. But we've got one deer in particular.
Look at that one.
Coming up here in a few weeks, going to be passing through our yards. We don't have to worry about him so much, I don't think.
Lovely Rudolph.
Rudolph.
We love to look at him, but what does he do to our trees and shrubs?
Well, his friends, his family members, these guys, the standard.
Yeah, it's not Rudolph that does it. It's
Rudolph.
This
we
one.
leave food out for Rudolph typically sometimes. But,
that's
anyway,
right.
But
that's
these,
right.
I mean, in all seriousness, deer can be a big problem in more rural areas of the county. Eating stuff up.
It is, and we get some calls in the office that at the outskirts and even in town that we get some deer issues, and not only eating things, but they are pretty destructive. And for those of you that are out in the rural areas, maybe by a walkway or a creek or something, Lord, there's some problems. You plant a young tree, and man, they can really wreak havoc on it. We get orchards, pecan orchards where they plant them. They've almost got to be out there and either we'll talk later on control, but they've got to deal with it because they will chew them down, or not only chew them, but those horns are pretty rough on them during the rut season, which we're at now.
Well, we've got a picture here of a tree like this. They'll just scrape all that bark off of there.
So that's a rub is what that's called to the hunters, and they're taking those horns and they're marking their territory. They're marking their territory, so they're going to scrape that, letting the females know that they're in the area and ready to breed. Essentially, they'll scrape that with their horns and shoot some urine on that or some urine around. And that will attract the females and hold them in a little longer where that male could come in and breed. Right. But for gardeners, it's kind of hell on our trees.
This tree is probably done.
Yeah, I mean, that's a young tree, probably 2 years old, planted 2 years, a thin bark tree, and looks like they've damaged more than half of that canopy, not canopy, but cambium layer. Right. And, that's going to be hard to pull out of it. It's a young tree, which is a good thing, but on the other side, it's damaged it pretty bad. Right. So, on this, you get this, and there's, as we've talked in the past on pruning and things, you don't want to cover this up. You don't want to put pruning paint or a sealant on this. You want that tree to kind of heal on its own. But, this tree's in a bind. So, yeah.
Maybe a lethal blow. But it's not just trees. They'll go after the herbaceous kind of plants. I guess they call those forbs, like herbaceous plants, shrubs,
tender, tasty bedding plants, right. Shrubs, things like that. They do go in and munch. Kind of like rabbits. We hear a lot about rabbits coming in. It's probably more common for rabbits because we're in town and more city folk call us. Right. But the rabbits are there. But these deer can come in and munch away as well. So it's we love to see our deer, but they're pretty devastating at times. For our trees, and we don't think about forbs and small plants, but they will eat those as well. So.
Well, I know in our diagnostic center we'll get calls from people that maybe live by the lake or something, in a more rural area, if you will, and it's like, what can I plant? I mean, what do I do about these guys? Because you can't really spray. But there are maybe some strategies you can
deter. And it's kind of like any wildlife. Once you kind of deter them a little bit, they'll forget about it. But they may come back a month, 2 months, 3 months. They're smart. They're smart like rabbits and things. So I think one of the main thing is chicken wire.
Right.
If orchards are going to, pecan orchards are going to plant hundreds of trees, they're going to put up some sort of barrier to keep them from rubbing, to keep them from rubbing their antlers on those trees. So usually a chicken wire or some sort of, something to physically keep them out of it or away from it. That's probably the most common. But when you get into flower beds, it's going to be harder to do that. There's other things out there that we can do. One thing that's pretty neat is like motion detected sprinkler systems.
Oh, fancy.
Kind of so they're in your vegetable garden, so you set up an area where that sprinkler will go on, and it'll zap them and shoo them away for a while. At least
shoo them away for a while.
Yeah.
I've heard also maybe dogs. A dog might.
Barking dogs always good, or running them away that way. So a few things, but the main thing is to get them to forget about it and go away, and then hopefully keep them away for a little while.
I laughed one day on one of the Facebook gardening groups. I probably shared it on our Facebook page, but it had a photo of this guy just redone his vegetable garden, and it looked like a fortress. He had walls all the way around and across the top, and a door and all this stuff. It's like there were no deer going to get at his vegetables. We don't necessarily want to go to those extents, but if you did have a vegetable garden, you could put up a chicken wire fence around it,
electric fence, and you don't have to leave it totally electrocuted the whole time, but maybe they get zapped and stay away for a week or 2 or 3, and then turn it back on. So wildlife are pretty difficult to deal with. Deer, especially this time of year, it's rut, so they're looking for a mate. They're wanting to breed, so the boys have lost their minds, essentially. That's why you see a lot of movement with around the roads and vehicles, and you see more deer now than you do non-rut season.
Maybe along the highway that have gotten hit or something.
Yeah, so they're wanting to show their sign. They're wanting to use their big antlers and scrape those trees. The bigger tree, the bigger the deer usually. Or bigger the buck. The females aren't going to do it, but and it's this time of year we start seeing more and more action.
Right. What about, repellents? I haven't heard great thing about repellents.
So there's not a lot of good repellents out there that work for, not only deer but wildlife. They've used a couple where it's capsaicin, that hot pepper, or rotten eggs or sulfur smell is another liquid that you can somewhat spray. On an herbaceous garden, you get planted and you kind of want to. That may work a little where they go and munch it and taste it and doesn't smell right, or that could help a little. I think it'd help more than the trees and things like that. But the repellents, not that totally effective, but they can work essentially.
Well, and it essentially, at least my understanding is, you're going to have to replace those every time it rains. Because it'll wash it out. And you're going to be out there and doing it. So if it's marginally effective and high labor, I don't know that's going to be first on my list. I probably lean more toward the barrier, but there's also the strategy of picking plants that are not going to be on the menu.
Correct.
Per se.
Correct. You was pointing out a fact sheet, and it's deer fact sheet, and I have it right here, and it's 6427, and the
we'll post a link to it at the end of the
ornamental and garden plants controlling deer damage is what our fact sheet, and it's they've got a good list of plants that are somewhat resistant and somewhat susceptible, kind of like a disease, but and it basically I think goes to the pungent smell of the leaves once you prune them or cut them or eat them or whatever. The more pungent, the less they're going to be damaged, essentially. But like any wildlife, if they like it or if they like that area and have nothing else, they're still going to go back to that pungent smelling, herbaceous plant or plant. So
and it probably relates to the availability of other food. If the food supply is getting diminished or they're getting pushed into your area, then
they're going to go and
your buffet is open.
Mosey more. They love acorns, so once they run out of acorns, then they're going to start doing other things. Which I think what happens late winter, they tend to run out of stuff, and then we're just about to start planting, and there's not a lot of green vegetation, so they're going to go munch on that green lush vegetation.
Right. But bottom line, if you do have a deer problem, and it's not just at Christmas time with the red-nosed deer, but the standard deer that visit our yards, etc., you don't have to give up your garden.
Nah.
There's things you could plant that are going to be low on the food scale that they're not necessarily going to be interested in.
Send them to the neighbors that plants those succulent, lush
That's right.
plants.
You'll still have something blooming, and they'll be over munching on your neighbor's yard, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, they're fun to watch. They're nice to see until they start to eat up all your stuff. But there's other strategies.
And they taste good, too.
Well, then there's that too. That's actually, it's hunting season right now, right?
It is, and that's important why we have hunting season, so our population just doesn't get overwhelmed. And the wildlife department does a great job with that. But we're seeing more and more, and right. We just got to do some strategies like we've talked about to help deter them a little bit.
Right. Well, the hunting it's very highly regulated. It's only a certain amount of season. I mean, whether you like it or don't like it, it actually performs a great service, because if not, we would have a huge
big
deer
population.
problem. The numbers would be overwhelming.
That is correct. That is correct.
Anyway, don't give up on your garden. We'll post a link at the end with a fact sheet that lists the plants that you could use if you do have a problem. But anyway, hang in there.
Deer damage. Yep.
So we talked about that. This week, our plant of the week is, what would our plant of the week be this week? We're talking Christmas trees. Christmas trees is our plant of the week this time. Not necessarily Christmas trees to go out and plant.
Right.
But take care of them. A lot of people are bringing live Christmas trees, live evergreens of some sort into their home.
Yeah.
Then you got to take care of them. There's ways to take care of them, and then there's some myths.
There are.
There's some myths on taking care of them. So anyway, first thing, basically keep them wet.
Keep them hydrated. Keep them hydrated. We don't want needles to start falling off. Once we start losing needles, it's a mess in the house. We got to worry about catching fire, that sort of stuff, and then just the mess. So hydration is one of the main things. So the one of the when you go buy one, whether you cut one from one of our local growers, and we've got a couple. Owasso Tree Farms is one. They grow them, and there's quite a few around. And then there's others that come in kind of a temporary, where they set up a kind of a fundraising, whether it's a school. I saw one at a school. They were having tree sales, Christmas tree sales. So once you buy them, once you pick it out, make a fresh cut, kind of like cut flowers. Make a fresh cut where it can start pulling up water from the base. And that's the main thing, is to not run out of water, not let it dry out. That they will keep sucking up water and keep using water while they're inside. And that's going to be your main key.
So bring them home, put them in some water in the garage, keep them cool until you're ready to bring them in. But then once you bring them in and put them in the stand, keep that water. Keep it
hydrated. Well. Doesn't need additives. I think we were talking about that earlier. Additives, there's nothing that can help there. But funny story, Dad. When we were little, we would go cut trees down and we'd throw them in the pool. We would hydrate them by throwing them in the pool. I'm sure it was right. Dad did it. Right. But anyway, that was the idea. Just keep them moist, keep them hydrated as best you can when they're in that house. And
then once they start getting too dry, don't just let them linger in for weeks afterwards. They probably need to go, because they get dry, and those bulbs, if you got some bulbs that are emitting heat and you got that dry on that heat, it's going to warm up.
Or a spark or something with the lights.
Nobody wants that. Or a spark from the fireplace.
That's right. Anything.
Because we've all seen those videos of the
fire, the trees catching, just poof.
It's immediate inferno.
Yeah. So again, hydration. Keep you a bowl down there that they're stored in. Keep water there, and I think you're gonna be fine. There's nothing better than a fresh Christmas tree, and it's fun family tradition where you go out and cut it. Go out to the farm where they were grown. That's kind of fun, and bring it in, get them hydrated, and enjoy it.
All right. So anyway.
There's your points on those.
All right, so now's the time. There's still stuff to do not necessarily in the garden, but I don't know. We're starting to think about next year. I'm starting to think about next year.
I'm ready for next year.
I've got my garden at home all cleaned out, all the old dead out, and when you start thinking about what am I going to do different next year? What am I going to get? Am I still going to do that? Am I still going to do that? But the main thing now is seed catalog time. If you haven't got it yet, you can get on there and order them. We got seed catalog. I got
a handful
couple
already.
Of seed catalogs, and they're just kind of, maybe I'm just a geeky gardener, but they're kind of fun to look at, new breeds, new hybrids, new different things. There's heirlooms seeds, and then there's these hybrid seeds.
Yep.
And the heirlooms are the traditional. They've been that way for
Cherokee purple. When you say that, you think Cherokee purple tomato.
Right.
But there's a lot of different plants, and those seed catalogs they do a good job with them. And it's kind of like junk mail. And once you get on a list, it seems like there's 4 or 5 that share it, and you get seed catalogs. And I mean, a lot of them's online too.
Right.
But it always gets to that point where now you start getting those in the mail. That really gets us kicking off to hey, I want to plant this eggplant, or I want to plant this tomato this year, and I'm going to try to grow it myself. Right. So at least start doing some thinking, reading a little bit about it, figuring out, if that's the one you want, and then order it. So
and there may be some that you may look at and say, well, I want that. That tomato looks delicious. It's nice and big, but it may not be the best for your particular area. There's information in those seed catalogs that'll also be on the seeds, in particular, like this, got this out of a seed catalog. It lists all the resistance codes that have been bred into this.
That's right. You may not be aware of it, but you'll see, say, like celebrity, and then you'll say in parentheses there'll be an N in parentheses. Well, those stand for something. Right. And Tom, you said you got this off Johnny's seed catalog, right. And great reference right there, because there's a bunch of them, as you can see. Tomato mosaic, fusarium's a big problem, nematode's a big problem. Right. So if you called into our office or you diagnosed it as one of these diseases, check for tomatoes that are, resistant to that particular variety that we identify.
If you've had a problem with, say, fusarium wilt in the past, there are fusarium wilt resistant varieties. And they're not GMOs.
No,
they're hybrids. They've been cross-pollinated.
They've been bred and bred to be resistant to these diseases.
Right. So if you've had an issue, or if you just don't want to have to worry about that issue, and you're not concerned about, don't necessarily I want to be heirloom.
Yeah.
These are great varieties, and will help you produce some fruit and vegetables that you can eat. And but also on the seeds, there's a lot more information on there than just the seed.
And how much it is.
Yeah, you got the variety. On this particular one, it's showing whether it's organic or not.
Yeah.
It's concerned to a variety of people.
That's
but
right.
Days to harvest, the size of the fruit, whether it's going to be soft, medium, firm. These are tomatoes, by the way, soft, medium, firm. And then you get to these disease resistance codes, where they're going to show all the different, what that particular variety has a resistance to. So you may like this one, but oh no, I've got a fusarium problem. I'll get the other one.
I'll try the other
instead
one.
of it. And so I like to hear all the kind of the opinions of it,
what they
better
think
tasting than the others, or classic tomato flavor, et cetera.
And there's a lot of websites, a lot of blogs out there, and the seed saving organizations are fun as well. Right. And they'll send catalogs, and you may find some different seeds, and not necessarily vegetables, but all kinds. Right. And try a few. Or the library. The library has a seed bank, Tulsa Library, and a lot of other libraries too. But I know the downtown library has, where you can go and check out seeds, and then if you have enough at the end of the season, you take them back. So, there's a lot of different things to do for seeds. We're not quite at the point where we're ready to plant the seeds for spring, but we'll hit that in our January, February editions. Right. But at least it gives us some talking points, some thinking points when we're on the couch eating that cup of hot chocolate to read a little bit about.
Through our seed catalogs.
Pulling through the seed catalogs. That's right. It's all good. It's a fun time to at least start planning and thinking about ahead of what we want to do.
Right, and some of us will actually sketch out our gardens and decide
not me.
What goes where, but
some of us are OCD like that.
Some of us maybe have a problem. Anyway, it's something to look forward to. It's something you can be doing now for your garden next year. Seed catalogs. Not
to use names, what's some of your favorite ones that you like? Johnny's has got a pretty good seed catalog. They've been around forever.
Baker, I think it's Baker Creek. It is an heirloom seed company.
Okay.
They're not too far from us, up in Missouri.
Oh,
Stokes.
Really? Okay.
I mean, there's a bunch.
Lots of them.
Lots of different ones, and you get on there and you can get their catalog, and they'll send it to you, of course, or you can go online. And all the information is there, but I don't know. There's just something about the catalog.
Just to have it in there. We've always had it, Tom. So it's one of those.
We've grown up with. Maybe we're showing our age. I like the catalog. Well, I also look online, but I don't know, the catalog you get.
And those photos,
and they look good.
Sometimes maybe photoshopped a little. but maybe not.
Brian.
Marketing.
We're talking vegetables here. No. Anyway, it's fun, and you learn some things, try some different varieties, and you'll find some varieties that maybe you're not gonna find somewhere else.
That's right, and that's where I was kind of going to the next thought. That's scary when you get next thoughts. Yeah. The colors of the vegetables are cool. They've got all kinds of colors of peppers, sweet potatoes, the various. They're all kinds of, a lot of the growers are doing some fun stuff with the colors. So you don't just have to have a red tomato or an orange carrot or a sweet potato that's orange. So, so there's a lot of different stuff out there color-wise. And again, you won't be able to find on the store shelves of local nurseries. Right. You'll be able to see them here, and then, you can plant them directly, or you can make transplants and plant the transplants after you plant them. So a lot of cool things to start thinking about.
Yes, sir.
And if you got a question about a particular variety, call our office. And if we don't know, we could probably do some digging and find out too. So a lot of options there for you.
Well, and we'll post this also at the end in the information, but the OSU does put out a fact sheet on garden planting, and they do have preferred or recommended varieties.
Yeah, garden planting guide.
These have been tested, these are approved, these will grow here in Oklahoma. Yep. But that doesn't mean you can't try.
And us gardeners are kind of hard-headed. We're going to push the limit, so we can try it.
I want this one.
I want this one. But it may or may not work, and that's what's fun. That's what's fun.
That's the gardener's motto. There's always next year.
Seed catalogs. Check them out.
Catalogs, anyway. So we move on to questions of the week. This question kind of harkens back to what we talked about at a podcast a little while ago. I don't know, 1 or 2 ago. We talked about hydrangeas. And this question is now a good time to prune my hydrangeas? This came from Alan. Most of our hydrangeas, if you've got one, this is actually from my yard, they're looking like this, and it's awful tempting to get out there and just want to whack that off. But don't do that if you want flowers next
Yours
year.
Looks that bad, and you're a master gardener?
Well, that's what it's supposed to look like this time of year. Yeah.
No, we've went through a few frosts, freezes even, and
they're done.
They are. You lost all the green leaves, and they are succulent, so they're pretty susceptible. They are susceptible to a freeze or frost. So, and they look this bad now. So it is tempting to get out with your pruners.
Now is not the time.
Prune them back. Now is not the time.
Unless you don't care about flowers, then go ahead. But if you care about flowers.
What happens, we go in and cut them off. A lot of our flower buds were in those top stems. Right. So we're going to end up cutting a lot of our flowers off. I'm a pruner. If it's out of hand, if it's out of shape, and if it doesn't look good, I'm going to prune it back usually. But I'm taking the chance of pruning off flowers. So most of the varieties that we have out there, your mop heads, your big leaf hydrangeas, your lace caps, all of those again they're going to set flowers about August, September. So after they get done with their main flush of flowers, they're going to kind of go vegetative for a while. So they're going to flower May, June, and then kind of just sit there and grow flowers July and August. So at that point, after they flower, that's the time we do need to prune if they need to be held back or if they need to be tidied up a little bit. We're not going to do much about this. That's going to kind of look bad. We can go in and prune some dead limbs and some leaves, take it back a little. But you can also prune these. Some of the leaves will fall off. But my point is don't take off those flower buds now because it looks bad.
Right. We posted about this on our Facebook page. If you don't follow on our Facebook page, just go to Facebook, Tulsa Master Gardeners, search for that, start to follow our page. But anyway, every once in a while a topic will just kind of blow up, and the post about hydrangeas kind of blew up. Lots of people going, man, I didn't know that. Well, that explains why I don't get flowers.
Don't have as many flowers.
Yeah, because I cut them off every year. So
that's a big question we get in the spring. My hydrangea's not blooming,
right?
And so we go through the list, and pruning time is one of the big ones on the list.
Right.
Even though we're tempted, just be aware. We've got some big tall ones out front here, and they don't look too good. So if you wanted to go in and round them up, they're kind of leggy. So going in and rounding them up, balling them up, but again, anything you cut off, you're going to cut flowers. So be careful.
All right. Next question comes from Beth, and it's about crepe myrtles. I wonder what this is.
I wonder what we're going to talk about.
Anyway, she says, I have a crepe myrtle bark scale on my crepe myrtle. When do I apply the dormant oil that you all have talked about? Well, now, for example, but crepe myrtle bark scale. This is what it looks like.
So we're getting somewhere with crepe myrtle bark scale because people are starting to ask, they're starting to recognize it, right. And that's been our goal for the last umpteen years, and just as lately, it's really been bad. And a lot of the times we don't get this question. We get this question in the middle of the season. Right. Well, when we're getting it now's the perfect time to use dormant oil, where we don't have any leaves. So we can spray a heavy oil on there and coat that scale, coat that felt scale, which I think you got a close up. So going back to what this is crepe myrtle bark scale. It's a felt scale. So it's a cousin to euonymus scale, and we've got numerous different types of scale in our landscape, but they will really be exposed now because we don't have leaves and we can see them. But the main thing on this crepe myrtle is it has sooty mold. This black appearance is from the exudate or the honeydew of this scale. The scale's attached. It's feeding inside the plant, and then it's pulling those juices in and excreting a sugary substance called honeydew. Right. The honeydew then is attracted to a mold that turns black. It makes that mold feeds on the sugar, and it turns that particular bark or that limb or that leaf black from the sugary substance. Right. So now is the perfect time to coat those scales with a heavy oil. It's a winter oil or a dormant oil is what it's called on the store shelves.
Now, and we call it dormant oil. Mm-hmm. Because you use it when the plants are dormant. Because if it's too thick for when they're alive and growing and thriving,
it won't let the leaves transpire and breathe when we coat it in the summertime with that heavy dormant oil.
Right. But that heavy dormant oil does a better job of choking out these scales. So you can buy it in a can, dormant oil, and it'll have instructions. You get one of those pumpers, mix it to the instructions of how it says to mix it, and then just spray it. I mean, it's just an oil-based product. I've been telling everybody monthly, but I mean, if you've got a pretty day out there and it's been 2 weeks, spray it. It's not going to hurt anything. It's going to help. And that's our major control recommendation right now is apply dormant oil in the wintertime. It's an issue. If you've got a crepe myrtle in the backyard, there's a heavy possibility that you have this. It may just be 1 or 2 of them white dots, but next year it's going to be covered like this if you don't do anything about it. So dormant oil is a good thing to do. Some of you OCD gardeners may like to get in there and scrub with soapy water. Or we may not.
Or may not, but basically that scrubbing is going to puncture or disrupt their attachment, and it's wintertime, so they may knock them down and they'll die, hopefully. But I'm not one to scrub. Some of you have. I've seen you out there doing it. And I'm not saying you, Tom, but I'm saying you OCD gardeners out there can get out there and scrub. And, during the summer, that may be the only choice we have. Right. But during the winter, we've got an oil that we can use. But be aware of yourself. If you got a crepe myrtle and, go out there and look and see. You inspect it. See if there's any black. If there's any black, or if there's not any black, look for white specks, little bitty. These are going to be, probably a 1/4 of an inch or an 1/8 inch long, very small, but you're going to be able to notice it. So go inspect it, see, and then decide if, you want to put the oil down or not. But if you've got a crepe myrtle, there's a high possibility that you're going to have a problem of crepe myrtle bark scale.
Well, and I think the key on the oil too is that application when it's above 40 degrees, I believe.
Is that what it's? I'd have to read the label.
Not when it's super cold.
You don't want a very cold one.
Now's a good time. It's not getting that cold at night, and it's up in the 50s or 60s or something. So it's a good time to do it.
Good point, and it does need to be looked at, and we probably do need to look at controlling them very quickly.
All right, so that wraps up this episode. Good stuff. And,
good information today.
We'll see you next time.
It's going to be good. See y'all next time.